Hello everyone. Let's dive into chapter 12, World Between the World Wars. In this chapter, we will be talking about world wars, everything in detail about the world wars, like what are the causes and the consequences of world war, what are the reasons for the world war, how they happened, which countries participated, and how the wars started, which country won the war, what were the damages caused because of the world wars. Everything in detail we are going to cover up in this chapter. So let's get started. So let's begin with introduction. In this chapter, we shall talk about the history of the world in the first half of the 20th century, the causes and the consequences of the two world wars, and the creation of an institution like the United Nations to ensure world peace and development. So, what are we going to learn in this chapter? We are going to talk about the history of the world in the first half of the 20th century. That is how the world was like in the first half of the 20th century, that is from 1900s to the late 1950s. And we are also going to discuss about the causes and the causes and the consequences of the two world wars, what led to the world wars, which countries participated in the world wars, and everything that's related to world wars. Also, we are going to discuss about the creation of an institution like the United Nations. The main purpose of the establishment of United Nations was to ensure world peace and development. So we'll be talking about UN as well in this chapter, like how it was created, how many countries signed for the establishment of UN, how it was created, what were the goals and objectives of UNO. So everything we will be covering up in this chapter. So let's begin with the first topic of this chapter, that is the 20th century. As you can see the picture here, this is a picture of a historian who is Eric Hobsbawm. He's a historian, and he called the 20th century as the age of extremes. Okay, so there is a reason behind calling the 20th century as the age of extremes. So we'll try to understand that, but first let us go through what is given in the textbook so that we can elaborate this in detail. So Eric Hobsbawm, a historian, called the 20th century the age of extremes. On one hand, fascism was growing extremely strong. Fascism was extremely growing stronger because of its ideas and unquestioned power and hatred for other people. On the other hand, the need for democracy was also growing. The average life expectancy rate was growing higher because of new discoveries in the field of medicine. Literacy levels also became high, that is, more people had access to better education. New art forms like movies also became known to the public. In the field of science, new discoveries were made about life and atom. More than 100 countries became independent all over the world. So we have to understand that the 20th century was called as the age of extremes because of certain reasons. Here we will talk about Eric Hobsbawm. He is a historian. He describes the 20th century as the age of extreme. Now, there is a reason behind this. There is a reason behind calling the 20th century as the age of extremes. Everything that was happening at an extreme level. Like if we see fascism was growing in Europe on one hand, and the need for demand for democracy was increasing on the other hand. But what is fascism? What is fascism? We have to understand the meaning of fascism. Fascism is a political ideology that emerged in the 20th century in Europe. So, fascist countries are those countries that believe in extreme nationalism, that believe in militarism. They have complete affection and a love for their own country and hatred for other countries, and they believe in the power of military. They have militarism as a core concept for their country. So fascist countries are characterized by extreme nationalism, militarism, etc. So in countries like Germany and Italy, fascism was growing, and in other countries the demand for democracy was increasing. So all of this was happening at an extreme level. So many changes started happening at an extreme level, and you can also see that the importance of education grew. People started realizing the importance of education, and which was one reason why the literacy levels also went high during this period. And we can also see the invention of new art forms like movies, cinemas being invented, and many inventions and discoveries in the field of science and various fields were made. And not only that, the life expectancy of the people also started increasing because of inventions and discoveries in the field of science and medical science especially. And we should also understand that more than 100 countries became independent during the 20th century. More than 100 countries became independent during this century, and probably these are some of the reasons why Eric Hobsbawm calls the 20th century as the age of extremes. Additionally, some countries like the USSR experimented with socialism, under which the state owned all land, factories, and banks and adopted planned development. It sought to ensure equality and fraternity of all people. Some other countries, like the USA, adopted liberal democracy, which ensured political liberty with multi party democracy. They promoted a capitalist system in which all means of production were owned by private person. So let's understand some more reasons as to why the 20th century was called as the age of extremes. The countries were also getting divided due to their differences. If we talk about USSR, which is United Soviet Socialist Republic, it experimented with socialism, where everything was under the control of government, be it land, be it factory, the banks, everything were under the control of government, and they followed plans for the development. So the main objective behind USSR for adopting socialism was that it wanted to bring in equality and fraternity among the people. Fraternity means brotherhood. So they wanted to ensure that the citizens of the country were treated equally and they share the bond of brotherhood. So that was the reason why USSR was experimenting with socialism. And on the other hand, countries like USA was experimenting with modern concepts like democracy, capitalism, etc. So you can see that these countries were completely in contrast with each other. Two different countries with different ideologies. All these brought so many changes across the globe at an extreme level. So probably these are also some of the reasons as to why the 20th century is called as the age of extreme. Now, let us go to the next paragraph. Here you can see at the beginning of the 20th century, the world was divided into developed industrialized countries of the West, including Britain, USA, Germany, France, Italy, etc., and colonized many countries of Asia and Africa. The colony countries were under the control of developed nations. The industrialized countries had split into two enemy groups or blocs. Germany, Austria, and Hungary were on one side, and Britain, France, and Russia were on the other side. Each group wanted to dominate over the world and control as many colonies and markets as possible, which led to the occurrence of the World War. So, as the 20th century began, the world was divided into groups, basically into two groups. In the West, countries like Britain, USA, Germany, France, etc., they were fighting amongst themselves because they wanted to increase their colonies in Africa and Asia. Now, why the countries were fighting for colonies? The countries were fighting for colonies because they wanted to because by the time industrial revolution had already taken place and they wanted markets, so these colonies were acting like markets. So there was a tough competition among the developed countries uh, for fighting for the colonies. The constant struggle among the industrialized developed countries made them into made divided them into divided them into enemy groups. On one hand, if there were countries like Britain, France, and Russia, and on the other hand, we see countries like Germany, Austria, and Hungary. So they were always fighting with each other because all of them wanted to gain more and more colonies so that they can use these colonies to sell the products. So each group wanted to dominate over the world so that they can increase their colonies. So all these created a lot of disturbances among the countries, which was one of the reasons why the world wars began. Let us now go through the timeline that is given in the textbook. Before we get into the timeline, we need to have a basic understanding of what a timeline is. Timeline is actually a way of organizing and displaying historical events in a chronological order. Chronological order means when you describe the events as per the dates in order of their occurrence. So that is what is called as chronological order. So as you can see, we begin the chapter with 1914, in which we'll be talking about the beginning of the First World War in the year 1914, and then in the year 1917 we'll be discussing about the Russian Revolution, and by the end of 1918 we can see that the First World War came to an end. And another important development that happened in 1919 was the signing of Treaty of Versailles and formation of USSR in the year 1922, and the Great Economic Depression that happened in 1929. In 1933, Hitler becomes the Chancellor of Germany, and the Second World War begins in the year 1939. So, in the year 1945, the Second World War ends, and with the end of the Second World War, a formation of a first international body called UNO comes up in the year 1945. So everything, as we go into the chapter, we will cover it as per the point of their occurrence. So the basic ones that you need to remember here from the examination point of view are the beginning of the First World War, Russian Revolution, the end of the Second World War, Treaty of Versailles, Great Depression, beginning of the Second World War, end of the Second World War, and the formation of UN. So as we go deeper into the chapter, we will be covering up all these topics in detail. And now let's talk about a little bit about the basics of First World War. The First World War began in the year 1914. It was really a world war because almost all the countries, imperial nations, and their colonies of the world took part in the war. China, Japan on the east, and US on the west took part in the war. The First World War ended in the year 1918. Britain and France defeated Germany and its allies in the war. Let us now talk about some basics of First World War, like when it started, when it ended, which countries participated in it, and what was the end result of the war. And most importantly, why this war is called as the World War. So here are some basics of the First World War. Like you can see, the First World War began in the year 1914. Okay, and it ended in the year 1918. The First World War began in the year 1914 and it ended in the year 1918. So that is, the war continued for almost for 5 years. Now talking about the countries that participated in the war. Okay, so the countries that participated in the war up frontly were Britain, France, Germany, China, Japan, etc. Okay, so these were the countries that participated in the First World War. Now, let us see which countries won the war and the countries that lost the war. As we know that the war was led between two opposing coalitions, that is the Allied powers and the Central powers. The Allied powers consisted of countries like Britain, France, and Russia, and the USA. Whereas the Central powers consisted of Germany, Austria, Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, etc. So the end result of this war was the Allied powers won the war and the Central powers got defeated. So the Allied powers consisted of Britain, France, and Russia. So these countries were successful in winning the war, and the Allied powers like Germany, Austria, Hungary, these countries lost the war. Now, let us talk about why this war is called as World War. Why was it called as World War? It was called a World War because almost all the countries participated in the war. That is, the imperial countries and their colonies participated in the war either directly or indirectly. And since most of the countries participated in the war, this war came to be called as World War. And now let's talk about some of the causes for world wars. Number one, aggressive nationalism. Many new modern nations were created in Europe because of the people's strong feeling of nationalism. It was also the force behind the unification of Germany and Italy, but this ideology created pride in these nations and hatred against the neighboring countries. Italian fascism and National Socialism of German Nazis were the other forms of aggressive nationalism in destructive mode from 1923. Fascists promoted aggressive nationalism and the image of victorious Germany ruling over the world. They also mobilized the Germans against the other nations of Europe. So now let us understand what aggressive nationalism is. Nationalism means a feeling of love, loyalty, and pride for one's own country. And aggressive nationalism means the feeling of nationalism at an extreme level where you think that your country is the best and it in fact creates a feeling of hatred towards the other countries. Most of the modern nations which were created in the European continent were because of the presence of the feeling of nationalism. The feeling of nationalism brought the people of the region together and made them carve out a separate country for themselves. The feeling of nationalism also brought the smaller states of Germany and Italy together, and then it unified them as a single country. The feeling of nationalism among the smaller states of Germany and Italy brought them together as a nation. They were independent of each other before, but because of this feeling of nationalism, they started to change themselves, and they thought of uniting together as a nation. And that's how countries like Germany and Italy tried to unify them as a separate nations. Nationalism, of course, brought the people of the region together and consolidated them as a nation, but it also created a negative impact. The negative impact is that it created pride amongst themselves, and the people used to think that the other country is no way standing closer to them. They thought that their country was the best country, and they started looking at other countries with hatred. So that is the negative outcome of aggressive nationalism. In Italy, fascism was also growing. Fascism is basically a political ideology where there is a strict dictator who gives the directions and guidelines, and the people are expected to follow it. And there is also so much of militarism, and it was also expecting the people to be more patriotic. So this was growing extremely in Italy. And on the other hand, national socialism of German Nazi was also promoted in Germany, where uh, people were expected to be more uh, patriotic. So German was also portrayed like an idealistic country in the entire Europe region. So all these situations created intense pressure and stress among the nations in Europe, causing disturbances in the region, and which is why aggressive nationalism was one of the contributing factors for the happening of the World War One. Let us now talk about some other causes for the world wars, that is imperialism. With the growth of industrial capitalism, European countries like Britain, Germany, and the US needed to access raw materials and markets for their products. They wanted to invest their growing capital in the colonies. Thus, by the end of the 19th century, there was a race for colonies between the European powers. The newly emerged industrial powers like Germany and Italy wanted to redivide the colonies, but the old industrial powers were not ready for this. This created a lot of tension, often leading to wars. Now, the second contributing factor for the World War is imperialism. What is imperialism? Imperialism is where a country exercises its powers on a less powerful country. For example, Britain is an imperial country that exercised its powers over its colonies in Africa and Asia. And India was one of the colonies of the Imperial British. After the Industrial Revolution in the Western nations, there was a huge demand for raw materials, and also there was a need for markets where they can sell their products. So the developed nations started investing their capital in the less developed nations, and uh, uh, transferred these nations as their colonies. So by the end of the 19th century, there was a competition between the newly emerged industrial nations and the old powers. The newly developed industrial powers like Germany and Italy also started colonizing the other countries. They wanted to redivide the colonies with the old industrial powers like Britain, but the old industrial powers like Britain did not want to redivide or share their colonies. So this was often creating conflicting interest between the newly developed industrial nations like Germany and Italy with the old industrially developed countries like Britain. So there was a conflicting interest between the new industrially developed nations and the old industrial nations. So often this caused a lot of tension, this caused a lot of insecurity between the nations, and this is why, which is one of imperialism is one of the contributing factor for the happening of the world wars. Let us now talk about the other causes for the World War. Secret alliance. After defeating France in 1870, Bismarck, a German chancellor who led unification of Germany, the German chancellor wanted to isolate France. He made a secret alliance with Austria in 1878 and Italy and Austria in 1882. Hence, it was called Triple Alliance. France, on the other hand, made a mutual alliance with Russia in 1891 and with Britain in 1904. To protect itself, Russia, France, and Britain formed their Triple Entente in 1907. The Triple Alliance, led by Germany, and the Triple Entente made the European powers jealous and suspicious of one another. Instead of real peace, these alliances created an atmosphere of fear and armed peace in Europe. So now let us talk about another major contributing factor for world wars, that is secret alliance. First, let us understand the meaning of the word alliance. What is an alliance? An alliance is when two or more people or countries that join together to support each other. They usually have a common goal, they have a common enemy. So, when there was a severe competition due to industrialization, countries started making alliances in order to compete with the other countries. In the year 1870, Germany defeated France under the leadership of Bismarck. Bismarck was a German chancellor who was responsible for the unification of Germany. Germany defeated France under his leadership. After defeating France, Bismarck wanted to isolate France. So he wanted to weaken the power and position of France. So in order to weaken France, in order to weaken the power of France, he made secret alliances with certain countries. So these countries were Austria and Italy. Bismarck made an alliance with Austria in the year 1879 and Italy and Austria combined in the year 1882. Now, Germany, Austria, and Italy became one group, and this group was called Triple Alliance. German Chancellor Bismarck was the person behind the formation of Triple Alliance. Now that Germany, Austria, and Italy found their Triple Alliance, Britain, France, and Russia, which is another group, now formed their own alliance in order to compete with the other party. France, which was isolated by Germany, wanted to regain its power. So it entered into mutual alliance with Russia in 1891 and with Britain in the year 1904. So this group was called Triple Entente. So on one hand we have Triple Alliance, and on the other hand we have Triple Entente. So the Triple Alliance was led by Germany and Triple Entente that was led by Britain and France. So there was a tough competition. There was a tough competition between these two groups, and these two groups created a lot of insecurity and the feeling of jealous and suspicious among the other European nations. So, because of the secret alliances among the different countries, they created so much of tension and fear in the entire European continent, which was also one of the reasons for the cause of world wars. Let us now talk about the other causes of the World War, militarism. Militarism is a belief that military power is the best way to ensure security and to solve problems. The military expenditure of the six powerful countries, viz. Germany, Russia, Austria, Italy, France, and Britain, increased by over three times. That is from 132 million pounds to 397 million pounds during the years from 1880 to 1914. There are three important things in the context of militarism. Firstly, all these countries had a massive standing armies for their defense. Secondly, they competed with each other and increasing their military weapons. They encouraged people to support wars. Thirdly, a large industry of weapons emerged which constantly promoted the idea of using war as a solution to diplomatic problem. So the militarism is a belief that a country should use its military powers, military methods, or military forces to gain power or to achieve its goals, to threaten the other countries by showing their power of military. The industrially developed countries believed that they can secure their position, uh, they can secure their power and solve all the problems by exercising their military powers and by threatening other countries. Here in this picture, you can see that the military expenditure of great powers like Germany, Austria, Hungary, Great Britain, Russia, Italy, and France are increasing rapidly. If you observe the graph carefully, you'll find that the military expenditure increased to almost three times during the years from 1880 to 1914. In 1880, the total expenditure was about 132 million pounds and it increased to 397 million pounds in the year 1914. So there is an increase of almost three times. When we talk about militarism, there are three important things about it. Number one, all these countries had built massive standing armies. That means they were all well trained, well prepared, and ready to attack the country at any point of time. Number two, these countries were increasing their military weapons. Why were they increasing the military weapons? They were increasing the military weapons so that they can create fear and tension in the minds of other countries. Number three, a large industry of weapons emerged. A large industry of weapons emerged, and these industries constantly promoted wars. Why did they promote wars? They promoted wars so that their industries can grow profitably. If there were no wars, how would these industries flourish? So, for the growth, for the profitable growth of industries, they always encouraged wars. They supported wars. So these industries, in order to grow, in order to increase their profitability margin, they always uh, promoted the idea of war as a solution to any kinds of problem. So they promoted the idea that countries can only solve their problems through militarism. So militarism is also one of the cause for the happening of the world wars. Let us discuss about Balkan politics now. Balkan politics is one of the causes that led to the happening of the world wars. So let us look at what happened in the Balkan Peninsula region. So there were many small kingdoms in the Balkan Peninsula. Here in the map, you can see this entire region over here. This was the Balkan Peninsula region where people belonging to different sections, people speaking different languages, people following different religions, they were all living together in this Balkan Peninsula region. And this region was actually ruled by Ottoman Turkey Empire. Okay, so this region was ruled by Ottoman Turkey Empire. However, after the fall of the Ottoman Turkey Empire, so after the decline of the Ottoman Turkey Empire, the countries that were close to the Balkan Peninsula. So what are these countries? The countries like Austria, you can see Austria, Germany, okay, Austria, Germany, Turkey, and Russia. They were all competing with each other to gain supremacy over this region. They all wanted to gain control over this region after the fall of the Ottoman Turkey Empire. So here you can see the countries like Germany, okay, Germany, Austria, Hungary, Turkey, Russia. They were all trying to gain control over this Balkan Peninsula region, especially after the fall of the Ottoman Turkey Empire. Moreover, Russia and Turkey were trying too hard to gain control over the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea for the long time. So there was always a tense situation around the region. During the same time, Austria was trying to suppress the Serbian rebels in Bosnia who were against the rule of Austria. Now, uh, here we need to think about Russia and Turkey, why they were having so much of interest in gaining control over the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. Both the nations wanted to gain control over Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea because these waters were important from strategic perspective. They were important for trade, they were important for geopolitical positions. It was very important for these countries to gain control over the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. So that is why these two countries were trying too hard to gain control over the Black Sea as well as the Mediterranean Sea. So, because of all of these situations, there was always a tension among these countries. And at the same time, Austria was trying to suppress the Serbian rebels in Bosnia. Austria actually annexed Bosnia in the year 1908, but Serbians were not happy with this decision because they thought of creating Greater Serbia, which included Bosnia and Herzegovina. So, when Austria annexed Bosnia, Serbians did not like it. So, they were revolting against Austria. So, in order to suppress the Serbian rebels, there was always struggles happening between Austria and Serbia. So, all these situations created tensions among different countries. So, all these were happening around the Balkan Peninsula, which created a lot of tension in the region. Let us now discuss the main event or the situation that led to the happening of World War. We are going to study it as the immediate cause. So, in simple words, the immediate cause can be understood as the event that triggered the happening of World War One. So, all this starts on June 28th in the year 1914. So, the year in which the First World War happened is the year 1914, and on June 28th a Bosnian Serb, okay, so a Bosnian Serb, a citizen from Bosnia, assassinated means uh, killing by a gunshot is called assassination. So a citizen from Bosnia assassinates the Austrian Hungarian crown prince. His name is Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Okay, So a Bosnian Serb kills the Austrian Crown Prince Archduke Franz Ferdinand. So agitated by this, Austria asks Serbia for explanation on this. So when Serbia fails to give a satisfactory reply, Austria becomes very angry and it immediately attacks Serbia on July 1914, and this is how the immediate World War One begins. Okay, so this is the beginning of World War One, and since Serbia was on the side of Britain, France, and Russia, Britain, France, and Russia came in support of Serbia. Okay, then who were on the side of Austria? Germany and its groups were on the side of Austria, and that is how the World War One began. The World War One began with the assassination of the Crown Prince, Austro-Hungarian Crown Prince Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Since a Bosnian Serb assassinates the Austro-Hungarian crown prince, it asks for the explanation from Serbia. Serbia fails to give the explanation, so in return, Austria immediately attacks Serbia. So Serbia, which was having a good relationship with Britain, France, and Russia, these countries came in support of Serbia, and Austria was joined by Germany and its group, and this is how the World War One began. Now that we are discussing the World War One, we need to know about the parties that engaged in World War One. The parties that engaged in World War One are the elite powers and the central powers. Elite powers included Serbia. Elite powers included Serbia and the countries that supported Serbia. So, what are the countries that supported Serbia? Here we have Britain, France, and Russia. So Serbia, Britain, France, and Russia, they were all part of elite powers, and central powers included Austria along with Germany and its allies. Okay, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and its allies, they were part of central powers. So, in the beginning of the war, the central powers got the upper hand. What do you mean by central powers getting the upper hand? It simply means that the central powers had the advantageous position in the beginning of the war. So, in the year 1917, Russia had withdrawn from war. So, here you just remember that Russia was part of which group? Russia was part of elite powers. Here you can see Russia was part of elite powers. In the year 1917, Russia withdraws from war. Okay, it comes out of elite powers. But why did it decide to withdraw from war? Russia had decided to withdraw from war because there was an internal revolution happening. There was a big revolution happening in their country in the year 1917. A big revolution called Russian Revolution was going on in their country, and not only that, Russia also made an agreement with Germany. Now where is Germany? Germany is a part of Central Power. So there is no scope for Russia to fight with Germany because it had an agreement with Germany. So because of these two reasons, Russia had to withdraw from war. So after the Russia withdrawing from the war, USA immediately jumps into the war. Okay, USA immediately jumps into the war and it gives its support to elite powers. Now you might be thinking, why did USA join elite powers and why did it want to fight against the central powers? So there is a reason here. Okay, so the German troops actually sunk USA's commercial ship near Lusitania in the year 1917. So what were the German troops doing? The German troops were causing a lot of losses to America. In one incident, German troops also sunk one of USA's commercial ship. Now, Because of this incident, USA became very angry with Germany, so it decided that it shall teach Germany a lesson. So it immediately joined the elite powers. And it became ready to fight against the central powers, in which there was Germany. So this is how the parties were aligned in World War One. Okay, in short, the elite powers included Serbia, Britain, France, Russia initially, but later Russia had withdrawn it later in the year 1917, because it is having an agreement with Germany, and there was also internal revolution going on in the country. So once the Russia withdraws its support from elite powers, USA immediately joins the elite powers. Okay, on the other hand, we have central powers. Central powers included countries like Germany, Austria, Hungary, etc. Now, what is the result of World War One? Did elite powers win, or did central powers win? So here you have to remember that elite powers became victorious. Okay, the elite powers became victorious. Elite powers became victorious. So now what are elite powers? The elite powers includes countries like Serbia, Britain, France and USA. These countries became victorious, and the countries that lost the war included Germany, Austria, Hungary. Okay, so these are the countries that lost the World War One, children.